Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMaid coming to you live from Germany this week.
Germany, yeah, awesome.
That's fun. Today we're going to be chatting about founder fatigue, and yes, what happens when you get what happens when you get sick of your business?
Oh yeah, that's actually a good definition. Like, what is founder fatigue? Like, maybe we could tell that. I don't think it's really fed up of your business, but it's like you're tired of your business. Like you're starting to think, well, that's some of the signs. It's like you're starting to think of creating another business. You don't necessarily want to put more effort into your existing business. And what I found personally is like it's often linked to your lack of growth, but it's not always the case. Like you could have founder fatigue even in a growth phase. Did you experience it? Like, do you know people who experienced it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that when you're plateauing, or if you're even going down, like in business, it becomes, when you're growing, I think it's kind of easy to, feel good, and you wake up every day and your company's
you go on your Twitter account and you say, hey, I reached 10K this month.
Yeah, exactly. You're sharing your
everyone
wins.
Gives you shit
yeah,
for it.
Everything's like going well and all that stuff. But then there are going to be times where you're just going to kind of ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, is it all worth it? And in SaaS particularly, it might be that you're working as hard as ever or harder than ever, and your money is still going down.
This is kind of like the return on investment of your efforts. Like you put a lot of effort into your company. It could be disheartening. And I think that's close to that, right? So you put a lot of effort and then the needle doesn't move or even goes down, and you're like questioning yourself, should I carry on? Is that the right thing to do? Should I put more effort? It doesn't matter anyway, this sort of like thing, right?
The other thing is, I think, getting tired of your day-to-day. That for me, that's where I've suffered from founder fatigue, where it's even though like I knew that it was going to change, there are times where it's just like I've felt for months on end that all that I was really doing was just waking up and doing support. That was like back in the day, right? And that was like that. Yeah, that can be quite frustrating, right? Is you're just like, I'm just a well-paid support person right now, and you just kind of like get sick of it. And for me, what I've always found the challenge to be is when you're in that situation and you know that you're taking the right action and that it's going to change in the future, but you still can't really fight the feeling, and that's where I've particularly struggled. I think I deal with it better now than I did in the past, but
I think you got more flexibility as well. Like in the past, if you're the only one sort of like doing support and you put a lot of effort and then your stuff doesn't work and it's be like a year and then you got all those sort of like negative things that happen. It's like close to a burnout to some extent. I think it's hard to sort of like step out or like say, okay, I'm going to change what I'm doing now. It's like, no, support still needs to happen, right? But now at our stage, it's like we can say, okay, well, let's put down the slow, let's put the pedal, I don't know the expression, but it's like, let's start things as fast or as, and take it like slow for a week or two or some stuff like that. And then you can, or change the department you focus on. Maybe you've been like spending so much effort on marketing, maybe let's take a break and let's look at product. So this is a super high luxury. The other luxury we have as founders, we could simply just stick around, because I've been an employee as well. And when I had those sort of like fatigue, I just changed job, right? And you hear that it's like people starting a job, it's like, honeymoon dream, they work like so hard and so on. And after a while, then it's like, oh, okay. And then maybe they become like fatigue and well, they just change job. They can't really stick around for long. But as founders, whether it's a good thing or not, because maybe the best thing would be to sell your business and move to something else that excites you as well, like an employee would sort of like do switching companies, then we tend to like stick around. But the funny thing is, I think it just, for me at least, when I had it, I think I had it twice in my 7-8 years now soon. I had it twice, and one was very long. I think one was 6 months, right? But we got the luxury to stick around. And I think that's not a luxury everyone has, because as employee, you stop your sort of like contract with the company kind of thing, then it doesn't go very far, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can definitely be a challenging one. I definitely get what you mean about like things kind of feeling like meaningless and whatnot. That now I just try to spend, especially because I don't really have that for long periods of time, but I will wake up some days and it's just I'm just like what's the point, and
yeah, what's
when
the
it's
point,
that, yeah. But when that happens, I've gotten a lot better at taking days off, which is something that I didn't have the luxury of doing before. Like what you were saying, right? Yes. Is that when I was early on, if I wasn't doing support, then no one was doing support. So it's like when I felt the founder fatigue, then like it really felt like like a hamster wheel, right? Now, granted, I knew that it was a hamster wheel that was actually moving towards my goals, but that didn't make it better on a day-to-day basis. Whereas now, that's one thing that my wife pushes me to do a lot is, if I'm not feeling it, she'll be like, look, just go for a walk, go into London, right? Go do something else, go watch football, go to the pub and drink, like whatever. But like, if you don't want to work, then like don't work and come back tomorrow when you do want to work,
That's
and
interesting.
That definitely helps a lot.
That's super interesting. And I think we can discuss about that, like what helps. So for you, it's doing any other activity. I don't think this is true of any activity. I think some are much better than others. One, for example, could be more socializing, right? Yeah. Because it's all too easy when we have founder fatigue to feel we're alone. And it's funny, actually, everyone in our mastermind group also went through a founder fatigue at some point.
Yeah, I think everyone does, honestly.
Even Brett, who is like super consistent on everything, I think he also went to a small cycle of like founder fatigue. And so socializing, I think, works super well. Maybe for me, maybe for an introvert, it'll be something else. But for me, socializing, going in a pub, and then meeting other friends, other founders, or other friends, I think is a good one to take your mind off that stuff, and also sort of realize that you're not alone in the struggle, or you're not alone, in those things. I think that's super helpful. One thing I think doesn't work is moving to escape stuff, like, for example, video games, TV, or binge watching, or some stuff like that. I don't think it helps, because when you come back to it, then the work is still here and it's even worse. And you don't necessarily feel any refreshed. I like, walking outside and stuff like that. That's cool. Like thinking, reading, maybe sometimes as well, but maybe reading books.
I think that one though, I think what you just said, I think is a lot more like personal though. I think there are a lot of people that would find going and playing video games for a couple of hours actually be something that would refresh them. Like, I don't think there would necessarily be anything wrong with that. I do agree with what you're saying, kind of like for me personally, right? That so sometimes with some shows, like I could go and binge watch something and then like the next day I'll come back to work. If you're talking about, I'm just going to go watch something and then come back to work in a couple of hours, then yeah, that's not really going to help. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways of doing it. The socializing is a big one. So the thing that I've actually found has helped me the most is essentially jumping on Twitter and just going like, who wants to jump on a call? Like, who can I help today? Yep. That I've found that helping other founders really helps my founder fatigue. That it's like, let me jump on a call and help someone, that's a little bit behind.
It comes back to the socializing side, because you realize that actually those people are struggling, and I don't have it that bad, actually.
It definitely gives you an appreciation. Exactly. It makes you grateful for what you do have.
That's right.
And it reminds you of just like, oh, there's a lot of founders out there that would love to be making as much money as we do and only have to do support at the moment, right? And
that's right.
Yeah, like that. It doesn't like invalidate anything that we're feeling, but sometimes it's nice to have that reminder.
Yeah, and I think like also pursuing something you do want to do in life will help also tremendously. Let's say, for example, one of your hobby is to be a writer. Then advancing on your book on the side when you don't feel like fully on your business is a good thing too. You have to just be like, for me, I think it was traveling and meeting other founders, around the world. I think that was great for me. One thing you do have to be careful about, and that's why I mentioned video games and TV, is like, it shouldn't just be like an sort of like escape. And there are some psychological studies about like what are some of the best activities for those type of things. And that's why I mentioned video games. Unless you probably playing online with friends, that could be like a different phase, right? But if you find like if you do an activity as an escape, I think it's less successful than if you do something that truly build up on your life value in a sense, right? If this is like knowing more people, building more ties with other people, like socially, things, or it's exploring, whether it's the mind, like through meditation and stuff like that. Although I never really thought meditation was working for me, but anyway, that's a different topic. Just be aware, like be mindful, like is it like something I'm trying to escape and then I do something to sort of like wait, pass time kind of thing, or is it really something that will contribute also to my life, and it's okay to have something else in your life going better at that point in time, because it sort of like helps you balance the thing, I would say.
Yeah, as you say that, I think there's definitely a difference between like founder fatigue. At least for me, there's a difference in like founder fatigue and just like I'm not feeling productive today, right? There's a big difference between those two. That's of true, like if I'm like not feeling productive, and I'm just like, okay, like I'm not going to work today because I'm not feeling it, and I know I'm going to come back tomorrow and be like twice as productive. So instead of just like trying to force myself to work today, instead I'm going to go do something else, then I think that binge watching something is just fine if it's a show that I actually want to watch, and like all of that stuff. But if it's like real kind of founder fatigue of just like what's the point of all this, like why why am I here, why am I doing this? Help. Exactly. Right. Yeah, so I agree with that. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, like we were talking about, I think everyone goes through it. I think that everyone struggles. And,
I'm wondering if this is a taboo, or if like is it a taboo in our circle, or is it?
I wouldn't say so. I think people talk about it when they get like tired of it and stuff. Like I just think that
true, they go and sell their business.
No, I know. I don't actually think so. I actually don't think that most founders get fatigued and then go and sell like their businesses. Like I think that that's actually very, very rare. Like I don't want to say that it like doesn't happen, but I don't think
happen in our mastermind group. That's exactly what happened, right? But maybe it's anecdotal.
We can chat, like let's chat about that one when we're not recording, because that's I think that was a very, very different situation. Like I don't think that it's fair to consider that like your normal founder fatigue, because I think that every single founder, at least in SaaS, I think goes through like this sort of fatigue probably a couple of times. And I think that it has to do with kind of the different levels. I think founder fatigue, when you're at like $1,000 a month, is like, I'm working so hard and I'm making almost no money. Is any of this worth it? Right. Whereas like when you have founder fatigue at $100,000 a month, then it's kind of like, what's the point in life? Like, do I really exist to just like to do like, the founder fatigues are so very true. Like different. Yeah. And I think that most people go through multiple of them and stuff. So, but I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just being more active on Twitter that I do see a lot more people that are talking about that sort of stuff and are going through, like the mental game of business is talked about a lot more online now than it was like 10 years ago, right? A lot more people share about their struggles and everything.
Yeah, this is true. Although I mean, you probably don't hear that from, any big company, like, but again, like, should we do a difference between a CEO having fatigue or is it a founder having fatigue, right? Because as a founder, you also got the luxury of stepping out of the business. You still own the business.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, if we're going back to kind of the conversation that we had last week, right? If the CEO is working for people that have investment in the company, that makes a very, very big difference. It's a job, right? Like if you're suffering from fatigue as a CEO, you're much less likely to talk about that publicly because investors will like lose faith and all of that stuff. So we're really talking about like founder CEOs right now.
Right. Cool. So do you know any big one that's with company like, I don't know, Slack or IBM or whatever, where the founder, express, actually, they don't even need to, they can go ahead. It's like that guy who actually, sold Minecraft and like made absolutely like million. And then it's like, what's the point in life, buy a massive mansion and actually go into depression. And everyone like wonder, well, you got money now. It's like, it's nothing to do with that, right? You can
Yeah,
have
yeah.
like a lot of money, you can still feel it in the end, like you mentioned, different fatigue probably, but it's still the same, in the end.
Exactly. I mean, it's talked about a lot when you read like biographies, right? That when you read like Steve Jobs' biography, like there were a couple of times where he was just like, I just don't want to show up every day anymore, right? And that was some of the times that he took hiatuses, right? Like, one thing is if you're running a big public company, one other thing is that they do have the luxury of essentially just disappearing from the public spotlight for maybe 2 weeks or a month at a time, right? Which can really help with those sorts of things, but they're not usually going to talk about those things, particularly when they're happening. They'll talk about them after. But it's a lot more common now, I think, for at least for founder CEOs that own the company and don't have to like answer to anyone other than their customers, for them to share that sort of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. The world is evolving. I like the idea of like you do see it in biography in real time. You just hear that person's taking like 2 months off or whatever for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's also funny to see that this is not an end in itself. Like, once my founder fatigue passed, then, I will just fully back on the business as well. I think like one question we could ask ourselves as well is like, what are some of the elements that contributes to founder fatigue? We mentioned a very obvious one is like the imbalance between the work you put and the effort you put in versus the actual results you're getting. Whatever is the result, you're looking at, it may not be just money, maybe, growth of your company, maybe growth of your project or adoption of your SaaS and stuff like that. What are some of the other elements you think do contribute to that?
I mean, for me personally, but I think this is because I'm ADD, it's it's day-to-day repetition. If I don't feel like I'm working on new things and thinking about new things on a regular basis, then it just doesn't feel like my mind is working. It feels like, okay, great, like it's been 1 month, maybe we're making more money, but I don't feel like I'm kind of progressing as a person. And I think when that happens for too long, then it begins to get to me. Now, I've found that it helps to always be having a hobby that I'm like getting better at the same time. Doing jujitsu has helped a lot with founder fatigue. When I was in,
I kick my ass in 2 weeks. Let's do it.
But that's definitely something where it's like, okay, like ZenMaid is a bit monotonous right now. That's how it was for me when I was living in London back in 2015, 2016, sometime like around then when I was in London for a couple of months. Then, we didn't have much money. It seemed like I was working so hard for so little money, couldn't really go in and be social inside London and didn't have as big of like an online network at the time. And jujitsu was like the thing that, 6 months later, it's like I'm staying the course, I'm doing the work on ZenMaid. But then what actually made me feel like, I've progressed as a person in the past 5 or 6 months is that. And so that definitely helps a lot. But I mean, I don't know if that's because I'm ADD, but for me, that's the biggest thing that causes founder fatigue.
That's great. I do have jogging personally. So again, I think there's a physical activity that probably help with the chemical imbalance somehow in the body. I think this is good. Yeah. I do think that having a balanced life is really helping when you have founder fatigue. So I think one of the things to prevent it from happening is have other part of your life also being good. Very often, and I think this is a tendency in our generation, of who I'm probably older, so maybe the next generation, is to effectively put like 120% on one vertical dimension of their lives. And if it happens to be the business, and if it happened that the business doesn't go where you want, then suddenly, you sort of like trashed all the other sort of dimension, whether it's like social relationship, whether with friends, with family, with lovers, whatever, or it is, health, those sort of like dimension. And as I'm getting older, I realize that it may be, and I'm okay. I was like 200% on one dimension, in the past, but I think I'm like happier to sort of like tune back and be like 80% sort of like on that dimension, as long as I have more dimension that actually works. And I find that as a sort of like more of a bedrock type of approach. So I think it makes founder fatigue easier in a sense to support when you actually have other dimensions in your life that are not as trashed.
Yeah, agreed. That's definitely something that I internalized at like a relatively like young age, is that if there's ever something that just like if it disappeared from your life, then it would significantly kind of affect who you are and your identity. And like maybe not like your happiness, because a lot of things could disappear that would affect like your happiness. But I think like the identity and who you are part is really, really like important. So I've always tried to have like a couple different pillars that like if ZenMaid went under tomorrow, yes, it would be a big inconvenience. It would be a big headache for a lot of reasons, but it wouldn't change my confidence in like in who I am, or my confidence, you know, to like to be able to get things done or to make the things that I want to like happen. And so that's having just like different like foundations, right? There's fitness, there's my family, there's my marriage, right? I mean, like family and the marriage like go together more and more like every day. But you know, there's jujitsu, right? Like there's all sorts of different things. There's all my friends, right? Where, you know, like I've been cut out of friend groups before, you know, like, and like that's something that when I was much younger would have been absolutely devastating. Whereas now it's just like, you know, okay, cool. Like, you know, it doesn't really impact me anywhere near as much as it would have when I was younger. And it's the same thing like with business. So yeah, I think having that balance and developing to have that balance really, really does help.
That's great. So how do we reconcile the two when you're actually just starting a new business? Oh, well, we have probably a different view on that. Like you can take it slowly as well for your new business. One of the things I keep on saying basically is you can try to, you know, do your new business while you have, you know, a job. Like it doesn't have to be like all in, especially at the beginning. So in order to sort of like, you know, balance.
Yeah, I don't recommend doing it all in. Yeah, I don't think that like makes sense. I mean, one thing that I would say is I think asking yourself, if you're feeling pressure, asking yourself where that pressure is coming from, I think makes a big difference. Because I do think some people get founder fatigue because they're like, I have to be doing this, I have to be getting it done. And you know, like my wife struggles with this right now.
On ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I talked to her about it, and I'm like, all of this pressure is you're putting it on yourself, right? Like you don't have investors, you don't have anyone that's going to care if you don't work today, right? And like that should be a good thing when you don't feel like working. Like, of course, like you have to do the work, but that doesn't mean that you have to do the work right this instant. You know, that like you do have some flexibility here. And so it's asking yourself, you know, is this some like false like time constraint that I've put on myself? And like if it is, does this constraint still serve me? You know, I see people that are pulling all-nighters to get out like, you know, to get out some feature that they promised their customers. And it's like, just send them an email and just say that like, you know, there's a delay and it's going to take another 48 hours, and then go get some sleep. You know, like, you know, why are you pushing yourself this hard when you set the deadline yourself? You know, and people are like, oh no, I can't do that. Like I'm a man of my word. It's like, well, you're about to be a dead man of your word if you don't sleep, you know?
I kind of feel that this goes into a different cast, and I do want to have this cast because I don't necessarily agree with with that whole state. I'm more of a 20-mile march type of mentality. Like whether you feel it or not, you do at least the minimum every day, and when you have more. But let's discuss that on
I
agree
cast. With that. I agree with that actually. Damn. So yeah, that would be a good one.
I agree.
Yeah, that'd be a good one to do, like the 20-mile march and everything. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, cool.
So if you suffer fatigue, reach out. I think that's probably the first thing. Know it's okay. Know it will pass, because it does. And yeah, reach out on Twitter.
Reach out to friends, reach out to us. Like, you know, everyone struggles with it, whether they talk about it or not. Everyone's going to hit that rough patch. And so, you know, if you're watching this and you're going through it, you know, everyone else does. They may not be like right now, but they do. So yeah,
love it. All right, thanks, Amar.
See you next time.